Lost signal. The silence of deep space was disrupted by an enigmatic transmission intercepted by Earth's most powerful radio telescope, the Horizon Observatory. At first, it seemed like just another noise, an echo from the universe's background. However, upon analyzing the patterns, Dr. Eleanor Bright realized the message was anything but random. A sequence of prime numbers pulsed at an exact frequency, interspersed with geometric symbols that defied human logic. The news quickly spread among the scientists in the underground laboratory, where a secret mission to decode extraterrestrial messages was kept under absolute secrecy. With tension thick in the air, Eleanor gathered the team and revealed what she believed was an unprecedented discovery. This isn't just a message, it's an invitation. As the group absorbed the impact of the revelation, Alan Cooper, the chief engineer and a staunch skeptic, crossed his arms while scrutinizing the projected images. Either this is a system glitch, or we're about to make history in a dangerous way, he said warily. Samantha Hayes, the data analyst, interrupted. The sequence is too perfect to be a mistake. They want to tell us something. The lab's atmosphere became electric. Screens flashed with complex graphics as Samantha and Ethan Wade worked tirelessly to decode the message's final segment. After hours of effort, the answer became clear. A precise set of instructions for assembling a peculiar device. If we follow this, Eleanor mused, we'll discover something beyond our understanding. The device's assembly filled the team with both excitement and unease. Driven by curiosity, Alan took charge of the construction in the main hangar, where bizarre components fit together into a design no one could fully explain. Samantha, captivated by the symbols, began noticing something strange. The images seemed alive, almost interacting with her mind. Despite their doubts, the team pressed on, fueled by the promise of an unprecedented scientific breakthrough. Days later, the device was complete. It was a circular structure with a pulsating core that emitted a bluish glow, faintly vibrating as though it were breathing. When activated, a translucent portal began to form at its center. Eleanor, in trance, whispered, "It's a portal to somewhere else." As the portal reached its peak, the air in the lab seemed to thicken. An invisible energy swept through the space, knocking over equipment and making the lights flicker. Beyond the portal, fast-moving shadows became visible. Before anyone could react, something crossed through. An alien, resembling a black wraith with erratic movements, emerged, hovering momentarily before vanishing through the ceiling. "Shut it down! Now!" Rick Callahan shouted as he tried to make sense of what had just occurred. But the device appeared to have a mind of its own, refusing to power down. It was too late. The portal was open, and something had been unleashed. The open portal and the hidden influence. The laboratory plunged into a state of emergency. Red lights flashed. Alarms echoed through the corridors, and the team scattered in desperate attempts to control what they had unleashed. Eleanor tried to coordinate the operations, but the growing unease among the team was impossible to ignore. The portal is interfering with the electrical system. "We have to cut it manually," suggested Alan as he scoured diagrams on the screen. Rick, weapon in hand, kept his eyes locked on the hangar's dark corners, where shadows seemed to move on their own. "We're not alone here," he murmured, sweat streaming down his face. Hours later, the consequences began to unfold. One of the technical assistants was found unconscious in a control chamber, strange marks covering his arms and incoherent murmurs spilling from his lips. As Samantha examined him, she felt a bizarre mental connection, as if fragments of the man's thoughts were filtering into her own mind. "Something is influencing us," she said, her voice trembling with fear. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed changes in the magnetic fields around the portal. "This isn't just an entrance," he explained. "It's a channel, and it's pulling things through." The sensation of being watched became almost unbearable for everyone. In the dead of night, Samantha began to act strangely. She murmured phrases in an unrecognizable language and seemed obsessed with the portal. Eleanor found her in the control room, staring intently at the device's data. "They want us to continue," Samantha said with an unsettling smile. "They've chosen us to bring the truth to the world." Samantha's disturbing behavior spread distrust among the team, and Rick insisted she be locked in a room until they could understand what was happening. Eleanor hesitated but agreed, fearing the situation could spiral further out of control. The aliens began manifesting more frequently. At first, they appeared as shapeless shadows moving across walls and ceilings. Soon, they began to take grotesque forms, resembling hybrids of humans and something extraterrestrial. During one incursion, Rick confronted one of these aliens in a laboratory corridor. Reacting quickly, he fired, but the bullet passed through the being without causing harm. The alien vanished, but left behind a glowing mark on the wall, which began pulsing in sync with the portal. "These things are connected to the device," Alan concluded, cautiously examining the mark. "And every time they cross over, the portal grows stronger." The portal's influence intensified. In addition to Samantha, other team members began exhibiting strange behaviors: incoherent speech, repetitive gestures, and even attempts to sabotage efforts to shut down the portal. Alan suggested shutting down the machine entirely, which meant destroying the equipment, something Eleanor was reluctant to do. "Do you understand what's at stake here?" Alan asked. "If we keep going, we could doom the entire world." Torn between saving her team and her scientific curiosity, Eleanor made a decision. "We'll disconnect the core manually, but if we can't, we'll destroy everything." As Rick and Alan prepared for the mission to shut down the core, Ethan continued analyzing the beings that had emerged. He identified a pattern in their behavior. They weren't simply attacking, they were communicating. Ethan believed the beings were trying to convey a message, but the portal's growing influence made deciphering it impossible without succumbing to manipulation. "They're not just observing us," he concluded. "They're using us as pawns in something much bigger." Tensions in the lab reached a breaking point when a larger and more terrifying alien emerged from the portal, forcing the group to fight for their lives while trying to maintain control of the device. The final confrontation with the portal. The alien that stepped through the portal was unlike anything they had encountered before. Towering, with elongated limbs and pulsating skin, glowing in shades of red and black. It exuded an oppressive presence that seemed to choke the air. As it stepped toward the group, the ground shook beneath its weight. Rick and Alan sprang into action, trying to lead the alien away from the machine's core. "Hold it back! Don't let it near the portal!" Rick shouted, firing his weapon, each shot passing uselessly through the alien's body. Alan activated the containment system, but the alien ignored it as if it instinctively knew it was beyond human defenses. As chaos engulfed the main hangar, Samantha, still under the portal's influence, escaped her containment room. She moved with purpose, as though guided by an unseen force. Eleanor found her near the portal, her gaze locked on the energy emanating from its core. "Samantha, stop this. You're being controlled," Eleanor shouted, but Samantha only smiled, her expression unervingly calm. "You don't understand, Eleanor. They don't want to destroy us. They want to transform us." Before Eleanor could stop her, Samantha plunged her hands into the pulsating core, unleashing a wave of energy that sent everyone sprawling. The energy wave's impact was devastating. The lab plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the portal's eerie glow. More aliens began to appear, their forms solidifying as they advanced on the team. Rick and Alan managed to retreat to a defensive position, while Eleanor struggled to regain control of the emergency systems. "We're losing this, Eleanor," Alan yelled. "We destroy the device, or it's over." Eleanor hesitated, her mind wrestling with the decision that could mean sacrificing years of work, but it was also the only way to save the world. While the others fought to hold off the aliens, Ethan continued analyzing their behavior. He noticed that they all seemed to be protecting the portal, as if it were a vital source of their existence. "They can't survive without the portal," Ethan concluded. If we can shut it down, they'll disappear. The discovery brought a glimmer of hope to the group, but a daunting problem remained. No one knew how to close the portal without triggering the self-destruct sequence, which could obliterate the entire area. Eleanor, we have to take the risk. If this gets out, there won't be a safe place left in the world, Rick urged. Eleanor finally relented. Alan, prepare the self-destruct sequence. Rick, keep the creatures away from us as long as you can. As Alan rushed to the main control panel, Eleanor noticed something strange about Samantha. Despite her direct exposure to the core, Samantha was alive, now appearing in a trance-like state, muttering the mathematical patterns of the original message. Eleanor connected the dots. Samantha was the key. If she could shut down the core, perhaps the portal could be closed without total destruction. Samantha, listen to me. You can save us, Eleanor shouted, gripping her colleague, who wavered between alien control and her own consciousness. As Samantha fought the alien influence, Rick faced the greatest threat yet, the colossal alien advance, tearing through metal barriers like paper. We've got to hold it back, Rick shouted, charging at the monster with everything he had. Alan managed to activate the countdown, but not without consequences. The aliens reacted violently, attacking from all sides. Amid the chaos, Samantha, tears streaming down her face, murmured, I can shut down the core, but you have to trust me. Eleanor knew there was no other choice. Do it now, Samantha, with one final act of will. Samantha placed her hands on the core again, but this time, something changed. A blinding light filled the hangar, and the aliens began disintegrating one by one. The portal started to close slowly as the structure around them trembled violently. It's working, Ethan shouted, while Alan frantically tried to stop the countdown. Hold on! Rick pulled Eleanor behind a barricade as the core's final energy burst outwards, throwing everyone to the ground. When the noise ceased, the portal was gone and the laboratory was silent. The price of knowledge. The group emerged from the wreckage slowly, staring at the empty space where the portal once stood. Samantha was unconscious but alive. Eleanor cradled her while Rick and Alan assessed the damage. We did it, but at what cost? Rick asked, gazing at the destroyed laboratory. Ethan, still processing the events, replied, the portal is gone, but the marks it left won't fade anytime soon. Days later, as the team struggled to cope with the trauma, Eleanor began reviewing the remaining data. Something gnawed at her. The markings on the core suggested the portal hadn't been completely destroyed, merely sealed temporarily. She wasn't sure whether to tell the team, but deep down, she knew this wouldn't be the last time they faced that mystery. Outside, under the starry sky, an unsettling feeling washed over her. The stars, once distant points of light, now seemed to be watching them back. Between the climax and the resolution. After the portal's closure, the apparent calm didn't last long. Days later, Samantha began showing signs of memory loss. I know I did something important, but it feels like parts of me are missing, she confessed in a private conversation with Eleanor. Torn between consoling her colleague and focusing on the investigation, Eleanor realized that Samantha's exposure to the core might have altered her permanently. Meanwhile, Rick inspected the reconstructed hangar and noticed that small fragments of the portal's structure had survived the explosion. They appeared inert but emitted a faint pulse when brought near electrical equipment. This isn't over, he muttered to himself. As Ethan analyzed the fragments, he made a chilling discovery. They carried energy patterns that didn't belong to this universe. These particles are alive, or at least connected to something greater, he explained to the group. Alan proposed burning the remnants to eliminate any chance of reopening the portal, but Eleanor hesitated. What if this is our only chance to truly understand what happened? She asked, her voice tinged with defiance. Rick interjected. What if it's our only chance to seal it forever? The debate ignited tensions, and the group's trust began to fray. The next night, something inexplicable occurred. one of the fragments vanished from the lab. Security footage showed Samantha walking alone into the containment room and taking the object, but she swore she remembered none of it. "I didn't do this. I couldn't have," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. The group was divided. Ethan and Eleanor believed her, while Rick and Alan grew suspicious that she was still under the portal's influence. The seed of paranoia was planted, further straining the team. The aliens, thought to have been destroyed, began manifesting again in subtler ways. At first, it was just a shadow in the corner of the eye, or strange noises in empty corridors. Then came clearer signs. Luminescent marks appeared on the walls, pulsing in sync with the surviving fragments. These things didn't leave. They're trapped here with us. Ethan concluded as he worked to find a way to neutralize the fragments. Rick suggested evacuating the lab and sealing it permanently, but Eleanor resisted. "If we abandon this now, we're leaving the world at the mercy of something we don't understand," she argued. Eleanor's past and her connection to the portal. Amid the escalating crisis, Eleanor began experiencing unsettling nightmares. She dreamed of the portal, but instead of the aliens, she saw her father, an astronomer who had mysteriously disappeared decades ago. "You've made it this far because they wanted you to," he would say in an enigmatic tone. In the dream, Eleanor was a child again, sitting beside her father's telescope, gazing at the stars. When she woke, she felt an inexplicable connection to the portal, as though her entire life had been leading to that moment. What if all of this is part of something bigger, something that was always meant to be? She confided to Samantha, who looked at her with a mix of empathy and fear. This revelation weighed heavily on Eleanor, prompting her to withdraw further from the group. While Rick and Alan planned the final destruction of the fragments, Eleanor secretly worked on a device to attempt controlled communication with the other side. "If we want to end this, we need to understand what we're facing," she justified to herself. When Alan discovered her project, he confronted her angrily. "You're putting everyone at risk. Haven't we lost enough already?" Eleanor, unyielding, replied, "Sometimes risk is the price of knowledge, the spread of control." As tensions within the group escalated, the supernatural events intensified. Alan began hearing whispers in his ears whenever he was alone. Ethan discovered strange symbols scribbled in his notebook, though he had no memory of writing them. The laboratory's atmosphere grew stifling, as if an invisible force was weighing on them. "The portal may be closed, but its influence is still here," Ethan concluded, increasingly convinced that the fragments held the key. In the dead of night, Rick found Samantha near the containment room once again, clutching one of the fragments. When he tried to confront her, she turned, her eyes completely black, speaking in an unfamiliar voice. "We are here. You cannot expel us." Rick restrained her and called for Eleanor, who watched in horror as Samantha seemed to oscillate between consciousness and alien control. "If this spreads, it won't just be her. We're all vulnerable," Rick warned. The group realized they had no choice but to destroy the remaining fragments. However, as they attempted to do so, a surge of energy was released, opening small portals throughout the lab. Smaller aliens began emerging, attacking with relentless ferocity. The laboratory turned into a battlefield as the group fought for survival. Rick led the defense, while Ethan tried to close the smaller portals, using improvised equipment. Alan, injured during the confrontation, shouted, "This is spiraling out of control. There's no way we're getting out of this alive." The portal was never closed. Amid the chaos, Eleanor had an epiphany. The portal had never been fully closed. The core of the original device remained active, but it existed slightly out of phase with their dimension. Destroying the fragments won't solve anything. "We need to find the core and shut it down from the other side," she explained. The plan sounded suicidal, but it was the only solution. "I'll go," Eleanor said. "If we don't make it back, make sure this never happens again." Eleanor and Rick prepared the necessary equipment to temporarily reactivate the portal, just long enough to cross through and attempt to reach the core. Ethan insisted on joining them, arguing that his expertise and energy patterns would be essential. When the portal was reopened, creatures flooded in en masse, but the trio managed to cross before Alan, and Samantha sealed the passage to prevent more beings from escaping. Journey to the other side, the portal's world. Eleanor, Rick, and Ethan emerged into a surreal environment. The sky was a deep, throbbing red, pulsating like a beating heart. The ground was an unsettling blend of rock and living tissue, glowing faintly in an eerie, unnatural light. The air was dense and hard to breathe, filled with a low hum that resonated in their skulls. This isn't a planet," Ethan said, scanning their surroundings. "It feels like we're inside something alive." Rick, gripping his weapon tightly, struggled to suppress his rising panic. "Stick together. Anything that moves. Warn me before I shoot," he ordered, though his voice betrayed his fear. The trio pressed forward, following a pulse that seemed to emanate from all directions but grew stronger as they advanced. Eleanor, clutching a device to track energy patterns, pointed toward a colossal structure in the distance. There, the core is still active. The structure resembled an organic tower, with tentacles reaching toward the sky, glowing in bluish hues. As they approached, small creatures began emerging from the shadows. They had skeletal bodies and moved with unsettling speed, circling the group, hissing in an unintelligible language. Rick opened fire to drive them back, but his bullets only slowed them down. "They won't stop. Just keep moving," he shouted. Reaching the base of the structure, they faced their greatest challenge yet. A secondary portal within the core, fully open and feeding its connection to Earth. Ethan, analyzing the readings from his device, made a grim discovery. "If we destroy this, it could trigger a chain reaction that impacts our world," he explained, frantically adjusting the controls. "We have to shut it down gradually, but that's going to take time." Eleanor turned to Rick. "Can you hold them off while we work?" Rick gave a nervous smile. "You two owe me a lot of beers after this." The sacrifice and the final mystery. The creatures began attacking in overwhelming numbers. Rick, armed with dwindling ammunition and sheer grit, fought desperately to keep the path clear. Eleanor and Ethan worked frantically at the core's organic control panel, trying to shut it down. "This isn't technology. It's biological," Eleanor said, her hands trembling as she connected pulsating wires. Suddenly, a larger creature emerged from the base of the core, its blade-like arms and glowing blue eyes radiating menace. Rick charged at the creature alone, yelling to the others, "Finish this already." Eleanor finally identified what appeared to be the core's central control point. She and Ethan manipulated the energy patterns as the core reacted violently. "It's working," Ethan shouted as the secondary portal began shrinking. But something was wrong. Eleanor realized that to completely deactivate the core, someone would need to remain connected to the panel until the process was complete. "There's no time to argue. I'll stay," Ethan said, already resigning himself to the sacrifice. Eleanor tried to protest, but he silenced her with a firm reply. "If this keeps going, we all die. Go now." With tears streaming, Eleanor and Rick fled the structure, while Ethan stayed behind, his hands steady on the controls. Surrounded by creatures, he remained focused. With a final cry, he initiated the sequence, unleashing a burst of light that obliterated the creatures and collapsed the portal for good. Eleanor and Rick, hurled back by the energy wave, awoke minutes later on the hangar floor, back on Earth. The portal was destroyed, but the loss of Ethan loomed heavily over them. The price of survival, back on Earth. The remaining team grappled with the aftermath. Samantha, slowly recovering from the portal's influence, seemed more lucid but deeply scarred by the trauma. Alan, who had kept the base operational during their absence, asked, "Did we really do it? Is it over?" Eleanor, staring at the ruins, replied, "We closed the portal, but what we saw, that can't be undone." Rick, sitting silently, could still hear the echoes of the creatures in his mind. "I hope he did it," he muttered, referring to Ethan. Days later, as the lab was decommissioned and the remaining equipment sealed, Eleanor returned to the room where the portal fragments were stored. She noticed faint traces of energy still emanating from them, despite their efforts. "This will never completely end," she said to herself. Locking one of the fragments in a vault she knew must never be opened again. Looking up at the sky, Eleanor felt a blend of sorrow and resolve. Ethan's sacrifice had saved humanity, but she knew this was only the beginning. "They know we exist now," she whispered as the wind brushed her face. "And we know they're out there." The story concludes with Eleanor gazing at the stars, a faint glow in the distant sky hinting that the universe still holds countless secrets waiting to be uncovered.